Okay, thanks for joining, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get our webinar started. First of all, I just want to make sure that I wish everyone out there, you and your family, I hope you're safe. I hope you're well. Uh, we are here to support our customers the best we can still. All of our warehouses in the U.S. are open, and we realize a lot of you are at home um, and and so forth, and you have some time to do some education and webinars and so forth. So we're glad we can assist in this manner during this tough time. But I'm optimistic. We're going to get back to work soon, and so forth. That's just who I am. I'm just going to be an optimist a lot of the times. So let's just go ahead and get our minds off that and focus on the discussion today, which is all about DigitalinxIP. We're going to do a product review, and we're going to do a pipeline. There's actually a range of the range in the audience here is those that didn't know we had an AV over IP solution, and those that do and have some experience and so forth. So I've made this presentation, this webinar, so it really benefits really everyone. Uh, we're going to do a review of our offerings, and since we don't really have an infocom this year to show the things that are new, I'm going to go ahead and release our pipeline and talk about what's in development for our IP line, DigitalinxIP, and it's very, very exciting. Uh, so just want to remind everyone, there is a Q&A, question and answer portal in the Zoom webinar. Please use it to ask questions. I will try my best to answer some questions in real time. If I don't be upset. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take all the questions and answer them in a nice file for you, text file for everyone, and we'll send that out when we're done, so everybody can have their question answered. So please use that Q&A portal uh, in the Zoom webinar. Okay, my name's Dory Hornsby. I've been with Wesco and Liberty for a few years now. I am a product manager and product developer, and I also head up the technical services team, support team, and so forth. I've been managing the IP line right about 5 years now, so we've been actually doing it a little longer than a lot of other manufacturers. So we've been in this game for a little bit, and we definitely have a lot of experience with it. And definitely want to talk over once again today what our basic offering is and kind of what's coming in the future, what's coming later in the year, and there's a lot to be excited about. Okay, so really, as far as AV over IP is concerned in general, boy, it's been a fast, I would say, 2.5, 3 years. Just about every manufacturer out there now really has their own flavor of AV over IP type encoders, decoders, software, system controllers, and so forth. So it's moved quite rapidly in the past 2 or 3 years. Like I said, we've been in this for about 5 years now. So we came out with our series right before this craze happened. And it's for good reason that all of this AV over IP stuff is really happening now, because we're converging to the network, which is great. We're starting to, AV is looking at adopting some standards and creating some new standards, and that's great as well. We've seen interoperability platforms and alliances form for networked AV, and that's really exciting. We're getting closer to being on the network and so forth. So, there's really two types of I would say IP systems out there right now trying to get your mind share, and it's the what we call the 1 gig system and 10 gig systems. Okay, and I don't really look at it as a one versus the other and which is better and which is worse and so forth. I really look at this as in, there's definitely applications for both. It doesn't just have to be one. So you'll even notice that manufacturers will will often have more than just one type of offering. They'll have a 1 gig offering or a 10 gig offering, but some you will see with just 10 gig or just 1 gig. And that's where we have been. That's where our space is the 1 gig network, right? So basically, what does that mean? It means all of these data rates for AV and so forth that get ingested and placed on the network will be compressed under that 1 gigabit per second port speed, so it can go on a very common 1 gigabit Ethernet managed switch. And that's typically all that's needed for these types of systems. And that works really, really well for a lot of applications and so forth, right? Now, the 10 gig or the 10 gigabit Ethernet platform has popped up there as well. And we even got a fantastic organization, alliance here that has really driven manufacturers to be interoperable with one another. It's not a standard, it's more of an interoperability platform. So they've done a great job at that. So there's about, I would say, 35, maybe 40, maybe even more than that. I know it's growing all the time, but there's a big list of manufacturers that are supporting SDVOE, which really is supporting Activision chipsets, which will allow you to do 4K 60, 444, 8-bit color, you know, and so forth, and have it transverse on a 10 gigabit Ethernet network. Okay, so that's very popular. You know, both of these systems, you know, they use different compression algorithms. Of course, the 10 gig is way less compressed and has a lot of advantage, like zero latency and so forth. 1 gig, it's really all about the compromises, right? Like, I'm going to compromise the compression for say latency or something else, but that's okay because it fits my application, and that's perfectly fine, right? So once again, we've been living in that, DigitalinxIP has been living in that 1 gig network space, but I'm happy to say that here in the next few weeks, we will become an SDVOE member, and we will include the 10 gigabit Ethernet options as well as the 1 gig. So our platform is expanding, and we're going to talk a little bit about what we have later. We're really happy to be involved with that and to support that alliance, because they've done some really fantastic work as far as supporting interoperability between manufacturers. And that to me is a big deal, because, you know, AV in general has, you know, they haven't adopted many standards in the past. Not saying that SDVOE is a standard, but I see future for us adopting some standards. There's even a standard right now being proposed. So moving on into, let's talk a little bit more about what we have and what we're doing, right? So we really have 2 systems currently. This is just existing systems. So this would be a good basic overview for those that don't know what we do, and just a refresher for those that don't. The first system that we have here is the 2100 series, okay? It's basically an H.264 product, meaning that it compresses AV signals with H.264 encoding, and every encoder generates about 30 megabits per second per streaming encoder, even though you can use a tool in our software to dial that down a little bit. H.264, our industry is very familiar with. It's been used for years. It's been a codec, standard that's been used for a long time. Anything that comes to your home in your, you know, your cable box or your Roku or whatever those devices, so you can see Amazon and Netflix and so forth, it's commonly H.264. YouTube is the same way. You can see great looking video, you know, online and so forth, and that's usually using the H.264 compression scheme. And it definitely it compresses around that 100-to-1 ratio. So there's definitely some trade-offs and some compromises you have to take there. In other words, H.264 has a lot of latency in it, right? So so if you're building a system for an entertainment venue and so forth, and they're going to be a million screens around, but there's really no true reference to the original source, there's really no need to do anything zero or low latency. because it doesn't matter at the end of the day. So it's all about the application at the end of the day. These are the 2100 series is definitely a low cost, lowest series in our totem pole, and it's great for variety of those entertainment, digital signage application where latency is not an issue. All right. The next series we have is the 5000 series, and this actually uses JPEG 2000. It's not as compressed, and that means there's not as much latency. However, you've got a lot more bandwidth that you got to worry about. So if you're doing multiple switches and so forth, you have to make sure that they're configured correctly, just like anybody's AV over IP system is concerned. Okay, so with the 5000 series system, the max resolution is 4K at 60 Hertz 420 for the input. Max resolution on the 2100 series is 1080p. So perfect for, once again, those sports venues and entertainment venues. 5000 series works better in higher quality situations where you need less latency. Say you got a projector set up in a room and you've got someone connecting with a computer to the system, and they're using their mouse and keyboard. They don't want to see a whole ton of latency. In other words, the response from the mouse or keyboard when they see it on the screen. So really that's a better application there, right? Applications for both, but both series that you're looking at here gets compressed with these compression codecs, so it can go on that 1 gigabit Ethernet network, and there's tons of network switches out there that's compatible with this. You just need a managed PoE layer 2 plus switch to get going, and that's really all that you need, right? So very, very easy to get off the ground with, right? Now on both, the warranty, I feel is a big deal. We've got a 5-year warranty on all of these products, so we definitely support the product line with a decent warranty on there. As far as how the systems are configured, well, they're all a la carte at the end of the day. You define how many encoders or how many decoders are going to be in your system. Say you got 7 inputs and 12 outputs. Okay, well, you're going to need to purchase 7 encoders and 12 decoders. And that's your system. So it's really an a la carte system, just like everyone else, right? So as far as all AV over IP options are concerned, there's always really a system controller, like a NUC or some sort of Android device or something that's running on that network that is considered the system controller. And we're no different. We have a unit called the IPEXCB, and it's a central control interface and system controller for an entire system. So you only need one of these devices on a matrix system. So you got that 7x12 that we were just talking about. You only need one of these system controllers to complete your system. So that's basically your bill of material: your 7 encoders, your 12 decoders, and your system encoder, your system controller. So the system controllers are going to route signals between encoders and decoders on the AV network, really kind of work as a traffic cop, so to say. It stores pre-configured system settings and scenes so they can be controlled by third-party systems like Crestron, Extron, whatever flavor of control system you use. We have an open API, and we also have a variety of pre-written control drivers that we support. Also, this particular system is what you need if you want to use our free iOS, iPad app and Windows app. And I'm going to show you a little bit about how that works in a minute and what it does. Okay, so you notice that there are 2 NICs on this device, and if I could just show you real quick how this sets up on an AV LAN and control. You look at you see the 2 interfaces here. One is powered. This is a PoE port, and it's powered by the AV LAN. Communicates with all of the devices on that LAN, and you can see the second NIC there is for IP or Telnet control. There's also a RS-232 port on there as well. So if you don't do Ethernet for some reason, you have RS-232 control. Let's say you have a very simple RS-232 wall plate you want to use and it's not Ethernet. Well, great, you can certainly use that. And of course, if you are going to use our iPad app to control the AV over IP system to do some switching and turn some displays on and off and so forth. You'll need to connect a wireless access point to a switch, okay? And of course, the iPad will communicate to the IPEXCB on that LAN, okay? So speaking of the iPad app, okay, this is a free app. If you go on to the Apple Store, it's iPad only, it's not iPhones. You're not gonna, if you look it up on the store with your iPhone, it's not gonna be there. You can search DigiIP, you can put a space between Digi and IP and you'll find it. And it's a control and preview app, all right? So what does this thing do? Well, it's really designed for very, very simple system control. You can see your sources, you can see your displays, you can see the sources coming in, and you can see where they're routed. You can simply drag and drop with your finger the source to a display location. You can power on and off displays using either CC or RS-232 control. You can create decoder groups for zoning. Let's say you got 50 displays, but you want to break up all those 50 displays in groups so they're a little easier to get around. You can do that as well, right? You can also use up to 5 iPads per system and still see the previews, right? That's actually turns out to be a nice feature when you want a very simple iPad application, maybe for zones. We talked about that, the zones splitting up, you know, 10 displays per zone for 5 zones, where you could have a controller for each one of those zones that only shows what's in that zone. You can hide decoder groups very, very easily in the app. That way, only, you know, that way, you know, you can see everything very easily, and you can control them and see the previews and so forth, and it all stays segmented in those zones for very, very nice feature there. You can recall presets on this. So if you have 3 presets that you can recall, this is a very, very end-user friendly type of device. We see this application, we see this app really going into a lot of, say, sports bars, restaurants, casinos, and so forth, where they're actually empowering waitresses and so forth to set the video as their customers would like it, right? So very, very end-user friendly, very easy to use, right? So here's just a sample here, system example of what an AV over IP system would look like for us, right? You see the 3 encoders, and you see the sources being plugged into those encoders via HDMI. This is all really an HDMI distribution system at the end of the day, right? You see the 4 decoders set up in a video wall mode, right? And you'll see a single decoder there. You see the wireless access point. You see the IPEXCB there as well connected. You only need 1 per system. So that's basically what a system looks like. So it's very easy to specify once you know what system you really need. So let's dive in just a little deeper into each series and what can you do with each series, right? So the first series I'm going to talk about here is the 2100 series. Now, we talked about H.264, right? It's primarily used online a lot. You'll see it, it comes to your home via Netflix. It's used really on YouTube and really everywhere. And like I said, it's less bandwidth. It's not going to tax your network that much, but what you're, the trade-off there's a trade-off here, right? We always talk about trade-offs and compromises when we're doing compression, right? So compression is high latency. So we wouldn't want to put this in a situation where it's going to be command and control, right? Where every little millisecond counts, right? That's not going to work here, right? We've had some questions here about H.265. H.265's a newer codec. Very much like H.264, it's just less bandwidth. And you'll see some devices come out from various manufacturers on those, but they're really the same. One's less bandwidth at the end of the day. So for the 2100 series, it's just an HDMI distribution system. Like we're not quite there yet as far as getting all of the signals onto the network without HDMI right now, right? HDMI is still prevalent. HDMI adoption rate is still going up. It goes up every year almost, right? So there's a lot of HDMI devices out there, and this is how we get these sources onto this network so we can move the signals around. Is it truly, this is really an HDMI distribution system. It's an a la carte HDMI distribution scheme. On all of the 2100 series, you're able to de-embed analog stereo audio on any of the devices. So you want to de-embed it at the head end where all of your other equipment is at. So your audio amplifier, DSP, and so forth is there. Great, you can de-embed it there, and that's coming directly off the source that's being ingested. Or if you want to tap the audio off the decoder side or the display side, let's say it's a room system and you want an amplifier set up in there, well, great, you can de-embed stereo analog audio. Okay. It supports PoE, so all of these devices can be powered by a PoE switch. It's about 6 to 9 watts, right? It varies, 9 watts being the max and maybe 6-7 watts being an average. So these devices are not going to chew up your PoE budget at the end of the day, right? So they all support PoE, right? Now they all ship with power supplies just in case you want to, you don't want to use a PoE switch and you want to rely on the power supplies. They do come with those AC to DC power supplies for each device in the box, right? Each device in 2100 series supports RS-232 control. Now it's a little different than say an extender where you're just simply passing the signals from one end to the other. You can actually control devices that is connected to this RS-232 port with our API. Right? You can control a TV on and off. You can control its input. You can control its volume level, and that's all done through our API. But you're able to take control of that device that's communicating with RS-232. So each device can do that. That really consolidates a lot of control cabling and so forth. You'll see a lot of like global cache devices being built into systems. And so forth, because the AV controller or whatever doesn't do it, our systems will do that, no problem. Right? So the decoder is equipped with an auto 1080p scaler, meaning that it reads the EDID of the device it's connected to, and it sees that it's native 1080p, right? Then it scales it to 1080p. Very simple, right? So really a very, very easy, simple scaler in there. If they see the 4K is EDID, it'll set it to 1080p because keep in mind, this is a 1080p system, right? Supports video walls up to 16 by 16 configuration, which is huge. It supports video overlay for custom banner ads. In other words, if you wanted to say, take this little part in the screen right here, and you want to put a little ad there that says something, if it's a restaurant, it's happy hour 5 to 7, you could do that and it permanently stays on the screen, right? So that is an option. It is backwards compatible also to all 2000 series. Now, if you're new to this and new to what we offer, this is an update from the 2000 series. And basically the differences between the 2000 series and the 2100 series, it's less cost. It's about $80 less per unit. So substantial savings per endpoint. It's smaller. And it's literally half the size, right? So that's really the two big differences. You know, technology always gets better, gets smaller, gets cheaper. So it's what happens, right? So we're happy to do that. Now, we do have a new multi-viewer to add to this where you can do multiple sources on one display, and I'll get to that in a minute, right? So that's the 2100 series in a nutshell. We talk about applications, and I keep talking about applications, right? So that's important. You need to pick the right system for the right application. So suitable applications for the 2100 series, I would look at as entertainment, right? Let's say sports bars, bowling alleys, restaurants, casinos. It's video distribution. The latency doesn't matter. And to be quite honest with you, there's really very few, if any, video files really looking at the TV screens, right? I mean, it's funny. I bring home a small little 4K test display from work, and I think it's okay, and it doesn't look that great. But I show it to my family, and they think it is just God's gift to TV. It's the most amazing thing they've ever seen. So, right? I mean, so there's applications for everything, and for every type system, and what looks good to me, it might not be the same for others. So, these sports bars, restaurants, bars, bowling alleys, and so forth, this is very much that type of situation. Hospitality and retail, they have a lot of digital signage usually that's happening and moving around their network. The 2100 series would be a great way to take a digital signage source and be able to move it anywhere over the network, right? So those are the applications that I would suggest, mainly because, well, it's highly compressed, and there's going to be more latency at the end of the day. All right. Now, the encoder part number and the decoder part number is IPEX2101 for the encoder, decoder IPEX2102. And we're introducing now the IPEX2102MV, which is a multi-viewer. All right. These components are all in stock right now. We've stocked, and our stock position is fantastic, so no worries about our stock. So you really have two modes that you're going to use in our multi-viewer. You're going to use what we call tile mode, and you've got about 10 pre-configured layouts that you can choose from and work from here. You can do up to 9 sources on one display, right? So that's a nice function. Just about every large sports bar that I go to, it seems like the piece of the resistance here is the big projector with all of these sources on it, right? Well, that's a multi-viewer, right? So this will complement our 2100 series because it's something that's definitely been asked a lot, right? So that's the tile mode is one way of doing multiple sources on a display. The other is what we call overlay mode, which you can basically place a source, and you can do up to 6 sources when you're using overlay mode, and you can size those sources any way you want and move them about very, very easily, right? So as far as how you control this, you can do it with our iPad app, or you can do it with the API at the end of the day. Right. Now, there are control drivers. I've got that information available here at the bottom of each slide. We've got lots of control drivers for 2000 series, right? So that's 2000 series in a nutshell. For those of you that has done the 2000 series in the past, just know this, that the 2100 series is backwards compatible to the 2000 series. So if you want to use the multi-view decoder and put it on that 2000 series system, because that's something your customer is asking for, you can use the IPEX2102MV. If you need to replace a unit, or we need to replace it for you, you'll be receiving a 2100 series instead of 2000 series. Just know it's all compatible with one another at the end of the day. Okay. So let's talk about 5000 series. So 5000 series, a lot different than the 2000 series. Well, because it's using JPEG 2000, it can do 4K, and because there's less compression, there's less latency. So we'll talk about applications for that in a minute. But it is, once again, an HDMI a la carte distribution center. You need to buy the encoder, the number of encoders you need, decoders that you need, with a control interface and so forth. Supports PoE just like the 2100 series, has a 4K scaler, just like, well, not just like the 2100 series. It has a scaler, but this is a 4K scaler. It supports video wall feeds up to 16 by 16. It is of note that with the 5000 series, you do have a bezel compensation tool when doing video walls. That way you can actually make your video wall seamless with the bezel interrupt in the middle. 2000 doesn't have that. So 2000 is probably fine for those video walls that just doesn't have bezels. But if you're going to use, say, TVs as a video wall, or the video wall that you're getting does have that little bit of bezel there, you're able to compensate for that and make that one seamless transition of video on the entire video wall. Right? It is Hdcp 2.2 compliant, and there is Hdcp management in here. Our devices has really made things simple as far as managing HDCP. Believe it or not, there's still a lot of displays out there, not a lot, but there's some where they're 4K compatible, but they're yet not compatible with HDCP version 2.2. They're 1.4 compatible. So we have an option in there to pass the 4K video, but to to downsize the requirements and allow you to use 1.4 and let you pass the video through. So the HDCP management on the 5000 series is a nice problem solver. We don't strip off HDCP. We don't make you sign anything or make a waiver or something like that. It's completely legitimate. Now, here's what's really different with the 5000 series is it is compatible with USB 2.0 full speed routing for, say, keyboard video monitor, KVM applications, or interactive whiteboard situations. Classrooms, training rooms typically will have that interactive whiteboard or interactive flat panel, and you'll be able to use our system with that, right? So the host, all right, the USB host is on the encoder, and the client side or the device side is on the decoder. All right, and I'll show you that in a minute. So that's definitely nice. Now it's full speed, so that means it's up to 12 megabits per second. So don't think that you can do real high quality 2.0 cameras. This is not high speed, it's full speed. So KVM, interactive whiteboard is really the purpose of that, right? Now you've got more, you got slightly more control options on here. You have RS-232, you got USB, you've got IR. Bidirectional IR is an option on the 5000 series. The 2100 series doesn't have that. So if you need bidirectional IR, you'll need the 5000 series. Now, the nice thing about the 5000 series is multiple encoder options, right? With the 2100 series, you just had a box. You had a standalone format for each, and that's probably going to be fine for just about every application. But I'm going to introduce you to all three encoder options, right, that we have for DigitalinxIP. And some of you are aware of this, and some of you are not, right? So, we talk about applications, but, once again, the application here is for situations where it's going to be a near live environment, I would say. Meaning this, it's got a keyboard mouse in the room, and that user is dependent on the latency from his keyboard and mouse when he sees it on a display. It's significantly less. It's somewhere around 15 milliseconds, 15 to maybe 25 milliseconds, and that's somewhere around a frame and a half per second. Things start to get really painful in those live environments like that. When it gets to 5, 8, 10 frames per second, it really becomes a hindrance, especially if you're trying to do any like live camera interaction, like a broadcast or house of worship. I probably wouldn't use this in this situation where there needs to be a sync between the person on the stage and what you're seeing on the screens, right? But you can use you can use the system because it's 4K. It can be a residential application, be a corporate application. Of course, retail, hospitality, even sports bars that would just want to be 4K compatible, and so forth, right? Now, the product that you're looking here is just a standard encoder that we've had from the beginning. It's the IPX 5001. You see an HDMI input, you see an HDMI output. That's just a loop output in case you need to maybe de-embed audio off of HDMI with another device of some sort. So that's really the only difference, that and the bidirectional IR option versus the 2100 series that you saw, right? Now, we introduced this last year, and some may not know that we have this, but we have a 2-gang auto-switching VGA and HDMI wall plate, and the part number is IPEX 5001-WP, right? Now, we really designed this for, for the education space, right? We're talking K through 12 classrooms, things of that nature, even corporate training rooms and so forth. Going back to that application where you have an interactive whiteboard or flat panel, and you want to connect your computer, you want to connect AV via VGA or HDMI, but you want to connect USB so you can have the interactive flat panel or whiteboard control the computer. Great, this is exactly what that was made for. Auto switching is based on signal. You don't have to control it with the API or switch or anything. Just plug an active signal in. It switches to that input. Plug another input in, it switches to that, and when you disconnect that signal, it reverts to the first. So it's what they call FILO, so first in, last out. So that is the wall plate, right? And the last encoder option here that's fairly new, and a lot of you might not know this, is that we now have a Dante-enabled encoder, right? The IPX5001D will allow you to take two-channel audio, right? Either embedded, right, the embedded HDMI audio feed, or plug something into the HDMI input on the encoder and have that two-channel audio on ramp into a Dante network, and then you can use Dante controller to route the signal in your Dante AV network system, right? It's something that's been asked for quite a bit. So you can really do as many as Dante will allow as far as channel count is concerned. The common application we see is, I've got 5 or 6 encoders, and I just need that audio feed that's being ingested via HDMI on ramped into the Dante network, two-channel, and that's really all that you need. So so this works really great for that application, right? So so if you had 4 or 5 Dante encoders, you've got 8 to 10 channels of audio that you on ramp into Dante network, and you can use that Dante controller to to route them and do what you want to with them, right? Now, this is a one cable solution. If you notice, there's not multiple NICs on this. There's just one networking interface. And so that means Dante audio, multicast video, it's all on one cable. No need to configure multiple VLANs. All of our settings for our switches that we suggest for these devices are compatible with Dante. We've spent a lot of time vetting that. And we're happy to see this system or this device come to fruition. This device can also be configured as an AES67 device as well. All right. So just to give you a little bit more of a visual here of how to use this Dante encoder. Well, you're plugging in a source from a device. Say it's an Apple TV or something. It doesn't have an audio output on it. With the Dante enable encoder, you set the EDID for 2-channel, and then when you plug that device in, that source device in Dante controller, a 2-channel transmitter just kind of magically shows up, right? So very, very easy, simple to configure. So that's the common use case, is to get that HDMI embedded 2-channel audio onto the Dante system. Now, if that's not necessarily the use case, but you need to use a device to on-ramp something else, like let's say you got a device and it's got a stereo output on it, what do? Well, you can actually use one of our devices and connect it to the audio input onto the encoder. Yes, there's an encoder on the, there is a 3.5 millimeter stereo audio input on the encoder, the Dante encoder. That way you can take any 2-channel stereo device and just plug it in and just on-ramp it onto the Dante network very, very easily, right? So that is the Dante device. It's called the IPEX5001D. Okay, and then the standalone decoder, right, is the IPX5002. Okay. Now I just want to show you real quick how to navigate to our website to find these items and to find all of the materials that you need, brochures, guides, switch guides, and so forth. If you go to our website, libav.com, and scroll down to where it says AV over IP Solutions, you'll see our 2 series there. And you can click on any one of those series and go to a product. When you go to a product page, like you're seeing here, we're looking at the IPX5001. If you scroll down just a hair, you'll see a ton of tabs here, system diagrams, documentation. We have the API, we have a switch configuration guide. If you download that switch configuration guide, it actually shows you all of the switches that we support and recommend. And that's always a big question. What kind of switch should I get? Well, we've vetted out a variety of switches, and we can guarantee them to work. If you follow that switch guide, there's a section there called Approved Switches, right? There's a deployment guide that just actually shows you what to do from beginning to end, as well as a quick install guide. All of our software to configure is there. We've got drivers and so forth. So that's how to get to our website. And if you want one brochure to look at, under our Tech Tank section at the top, there is a section called Literature. And if you go to that literature section, there's one here that says DigIP Video over IP Solutions. That's a very concise catalog of everything that we just talked about right now, right? Okay, so for those that are not familiar with what we've done, well, this is what we do, right? This is who we are, right? Now, in addition to, I have to really kind of remind people, in addition to that, you know, DigitalinxIP is part of the Liberty umbrella. So, you know, so cabling infrastructure for all of these devices we sell, right? Category 6, unshielded, shielded, HDMI jumpers, category jumpers, anything you need for this project, it's going to be there at the end of the day. And you can even bundle things together. Ask your salesperson about that. We offer a variety of services, all right? We do pre-configured systems. We can create a pre-configured AV over IP kit where encoders and decoders can be pre-configured and labeled. A lot of people don't know that. We even offer on-site deployment and supplemental labor, okay, for, I'd say, bigger projects and so forth. We can bundle switches internally with devices and Liberty wire and cable, so you've got one pallet, one package logistics solution at the end of the day. Yes, we distribute a switch manufacturer called Neveo. We keep them in stock and so forth, right? So if you're interested in any of those services, contact your salesperson, right? And ask, how can I get these services? And I can do a webinar with you to show you what we do and how we set up these pre-configured systems. So it's very excited to see that. All right. So now that we've kind of got all of that out of the way, let's talk about what's coming next, what's new, and so forth. And the first item that I want to introduce is the 6000 series. And yes, this is going to be an SDVOE product, which means we're going to be an alliance member. We're going to support all of those members. And what does that really mean at the end of the day? Well, just keep in mind that SDVOE is a interoperability platform, meaning that all of those 40, 45, 50 manufacturers, you can use any of their equipment with anything else, with any other manufacturer's offerings for software, and it's all going to work. It's all interoperable. So you got your favorite transmitter, your favorite decoder, but you need something a little, you know, less simple for the decoder or the encoder side, and you want to use something else, maybe because it costs less and so forth. Great, you can do that with SDVOE. So it's a fantastic platform. There's a lot of training material on SDVOE's website, so I highly suggest you do that. Got a really quick question here. Is it going to replace the 5000 series system? And the answer is no, actually, right? Because keep in mind, this is a 10 gigabit system. SDVOE devices are based on that Activision chipset, so it's 10 gigabit Ethernet network. The 2100 series and the 5000 series is all 1 gig, and it's going to be less expensive at the end of the day. And so we plan on keeping the 1G solutions and the 10G solutions all in one house, so customers have a wide range to choose from, okay? So just a quick preview of what these will do. Now, when you're using these Activision chipsets, you're not limited really. Well, you're limited to you know, resolutions up to 4K at 60 hertz, 444 8-bit deep color, and that's about a little less than 18 gigabits per second for the HDMI data rate. So it really takes care of a lot of existing, if not all existing source data is really under those data rates these days. So it's really compatible with just about everything. What's great about this chipset and this platform is zero latency. So you're talking about where these network operation centers and critical situations where every little millisecond counts, like in a live environment and so forth. This is the system for that, right? It's once again, it's interoperable with all other SDVOE Alliance products. It will have a gigabit pass through on it. Really, really nice to have that option, so you can pass through gigabit Ethernet to, say, a display or just another device that just needs to get on the LAN, and you don't want to spend the money on a network drop. So that's a very nice option. It's going to be low cost. We're going to be one of the first SDVOE members to really offer a very, very low cost device. We're talking less than $600 dealer cost, right? So don't nail me down on the cost, but it's definitely going to be less. So it's really an eye opener for a lot, right? We're going to have two versions, and it's really kind of the two versions you see here. We're going to have a copper version, which it's just going to be RJ45, and then we're going to have a version which has an SFP port on it, which means you can take one of those GBIC modules, and if you want to use a module that does LC or even category, you can just choose whatever SFP port you want to plug into the device, and then that's all that you'll need to do. So you'll be able to use that particular encoder or decoder for fiber applications, right? Okay, but very similar to, it almost looks like the 5000 series, and really does just about everything it does as well, except, you know, it's SDVOE, it's interoperable with all the other devices. These are transceivers, a little different than the 2100 or the 5000 series. The transceivers can be configured as a, you know, input or an output, right? And other manufacturers do it as well, so it's not foreign, right? So that is going to be probably somewhere around I would say a Q3 release, but very excited to be part of SDVOE and offer a low cost quality product for that platform, right? So once again, Q3 is what we're looking at. Okay, now here's a new product that we're stocking right now. I mentioned earlier that we stock and distribute Naveo. Naveo sells a variety of switches, wireless access points. They sell 1 gig switches, 10 gig switches. What they've done here is they have configured, they've built and configured a switch, either a 16 port or 24 port switch that doesn't need configuration, right? So it works with DigIP products, 1 gig products out of the box. There's no switch configuration required at all, right? Now, what's really interesting about this switch is that if you're, let's say you use QSC or you use other brands, Crestron and so forth, this switch is compatible with those as well. There's a list of AV over IP devices that this pre-configured switch is ready to go right out of the box. No configuration required. Getting a little closer as plug and play as possible, right? So the part numbers on that are NGS IPv16 and NGS IPv24, right? Those, the 24 port is available. It's in stock now. And the cost on it is very attractive. Contact your salesperson to get a quote on it. Very, very attractive price point for what it is. But this switch is compatible with 1 gig system only. This is not going to be an SDVOE switch. So anyone that does 1 gig, it will work for that. All right. Okay, so those are really all of the hardware options here. So a few questions. I'll go ahead and hit a few of these. Can the transceiver be switched on the fly from transmitter to receiver? It's done with the software, and it's done actually very easily. So on the fly with the software, yeah, it could be done very, very quickly. You can define it instantly. Okay. Let's see. Someone asked about USB 2.0 or 3.0. Okay, so these are going to be USB 2.0 devices, and it's going to max out at full speed, 12 megabits per second. So perfect for KVM, perfect for interactive whiteboard or flat panel purposes. There might be a USB mic that you might be able to use, as long as that's what it supports. It's a USB 2.0 full speed device that might work. I've tested a couple that does, but this is not high speed, and it's not USB 3.0. So don't think that you can plug that nice, you know, Hudley 3.1 camera into it and be able to actually use the full 3.1 bandwidth and option there, right? So is the NGS IP16 and 24 port fanless? No, it's not, because it is a PoE switch. And actually, that's a really great question that come up, because, you know, we're starting to see IP video systems being installed in rooms. It's not in the IDF or MDF, and the noise doesn't matter. It's actually going in like a cabinet, and noise is a factor, right? So yeah, I get that. This particular switch is not fanless, and it's a PoE switch, and you just need a fan at the end of the day for a PoE switch. There's not many PoE switches out there that are dead silent. There's just not that many, if all. You're going to have a little bit of noise. Now, if that's critical for your application, you need to choose a switch that you know, doesn't create a lot of fan noise, or use a non-PoE switch. There's nothing saying that you have to use PoE with all these systems. You can use we actually have people do this where they use a non-PoE switch. It's just a managed PoE switch, all right? And they plug their devices in, they power the devices with the wall warts that come in the box, and that's it. And there's no noise. So consider doing that, right? But that's a really good question, and so forth. Okay. Let's talk about software now. This is really where the most exciting updates are happening. We have a configuration software called Configurator, and now that is going to be called Arranger. It's definitely a huge upgrade at the end of the day, because it looks better, it's more graphical, very intuitive, very easy to use. Okay. This one piece of software is going to configure and be able to control all DigIP devices on a LAN. So you don't need a separate piece of software for the 21 or the 5000 series and something for the 6000 series. We're going to have one piece of software that can configure them all very easily. Okay. There are some advanced features that we're going to quickly go through, and there's also a simple UI control programming module in here for mobile devices. So you can control a room with a mobile device, and you don't have to buy a dedicated touchscreen. You can use that iPad or mini iPad to control the environment, set up the environment. Okay, so let's just talk real quick about what Arranger is, right? So Arranger is going to be able to instantly discover devices like most do. It's going to tell you what's on the network. It's going to configure the system. You're going to be able to name devices. You're going to be able to make AV routes. You're going to be able to build video walls. You'll be able to set EDID on all the inputs. So when you plug in a source, it's reading the EDID on the input, and it knows what to give. So it's not, you know, trying to go through the system to find an EDID table, right? You can set output scaling on all of the decoders. You'll be able to manage Hdcp, and you'll be able to create what we call system presets. Now, hold that in your mind, just place card that. That's going to become really important in a minute. So presets is a very big deal, which means you can make anything a preset. Any action can turn into a preset. Excuse me. You've got one input that goes to another input, that's a preset. You got one input that goes to all outputs, that's a preset. Okay? So hold that thought for a moment. All right, so here's just a quick look at what Arranger looks like. Very visual, very graphic, very intuitive. You'll be able to log on and set your matrix however you want it. You'll be able to set your multi-view however you want it. You'll be able to set up your video walls how you want it. And you can create any preset, right? Keep you thinking presets, right? It's going to come in here in a minute. Excuse me. Something that we've definitely we're happy to talk about is the advanced feature set that's going to be offered with Arranger. There's going to be an analytics portal built into it, so you can measure usage of the system. What resolutions are being used? What encoders are being used most? How long does each room get used? How long does each device get used? Is there a device that keeps rebooting up and down and so forth and on and off? Okay, you can do analytics, and you can find, you can see what's happening in your system and who's using it and what they're doing with it, right? There is a room health module, which is going to be a virtual testing of rooms, which can be scheduled. which is very nice. Let's just say that you want to, as an integrator for your customer, you want to set up a test in the room that happens at midnight every night, and it just goes through a series of tests to make sure the system works, and it reports back to you that everything's okay. Well, you can do that with this system, right? So you can do virtual testings of room at scheduled times. So very happy to see that. Notifications. So you can set email notifications on certain conditions. So something happens, you want to get an email about it, a decoder goes down, the system controller goes down, a display goes down. You know, you want to be notified in a promptly fashion. We'll have that built in. There's advanced security options built in as well. You'll be able to set custom encryption keys. You'll have allow, deny access to video rights, which means you can only allow, let's just say, for instance, we got a courtroom and we got 4 encoders in a courtroom for sources and 2 decoders. Well, you can set that room so only those encoders can talk to those decoders and vice versa. They can't talk to anything else because that's a huge security risk, right? Advanced security options will be built into it, okay? And also a scheduler. Let's just say you want to schedule systems to come on all at one time. Let's say it's a sports bar. Let's say that everything needs to be on by 11 a.m. before lunch, right? We'll set it for 10:45, so all the displays comes on, all the sources get routed, and everything really kind of does it automatically, right? So you can do that with a Ranger. So very nice to see that, right? Now, you can create custom user interfaces for mobile devices with a Ranger. With an iPad, say an iPad mini or an iPad or an iPhone, you'll be able to custom create that very easily, all right? You can drag and drop icons in a Ranger to create this custom UI and use those presets, all right? We were talking about presets earlier. In a Ranger, you can do a preset. You can record a preset where something happens, and then assign that preset to a button or an action in the custom control UI, right? So very, very handy. All right, so in the Ranger, there's going to be built-in custom templates for common AV applications, say like a small huddle room or even a sports bar, restaurant, or digital signage, or training room and so forth. It will all be there, right? So that way you can just get going quickly. You don't have to start everything from scratch every time. Now, what's great about all this is you really remove the requirement for these expensive third-party systems at really a fraction of a cost, really just paying for the license for the software and the additions, and you've got an instant control system. Really what's great about this platform is no programming language required. You can drag and drop icons. You can bring in a background image. You can bring in your logo. You can assign these presets that we were talking about, okay, to any of these buttons, right? Let's just say that one of the presets is, you know, turning on a TV. And setting the input to that TV, and then setting a source for the input. Well, great. You just save that as a preset very easily. You could even record that preset in our software as you're doing it, so it becomes a preset, and all you do is assign that preset. No programming language, no code to know. Very, very simple, easy to use. You can also generate QR codes with this system, so you can basically place this around a room or on a plaque somewhere where you can allow someone to scan that QR code and gain access to controlling the system with whatever mobile device that they have in their hand at the moment. So very nice. Here's a quick peek at the GUI inside a Ranger. You'll be able to do all of this very, very, very easily. I'm going to be conducting a lot of training, a lot of webinars, a lot of workshops, showing people how to use the UI, so it's very, very easy to use. All right. The last big feature in a Ranger that I'm really happy about is the native global cache integration. Typically, you know, look, all of these AV over IP systems, they're not going to have all of the connectivity and all the things you want, like contact closures and relays and things like that. And that's where these global cache devices come in really, really handy. You need an RS-232, network device to communicate something. You need to do a contact closer. You need to do an occupancy sensor and so forth. Well, that can be natively done inside our software. You don't have to leave our software to configure global cache and then come back and try to do any programming there. It does it instantly, right? And recognizes those devices instantly. Now, what's great about this global cache integration is I can take any of these devices and set anything the way I want, and that becomes a preset. For instance, what if I take a global cache device, put a occupancy sensor on that device to put it in the room, and have that room completely shut down when there's nobody been in it for, say, 30 minutes. You can do all of that with presets, and there's no control code or programming required to do that. You can do it all on your own without digging deep into source code. So that's what I really, really like about the about Arranger. So that's also somewhere around Q3. The 6000 series and the software is really all going to kind of come up around Q3. We were going to show it at InfoComm, but because there's really no InfoComm, we wanted to just kind of show it now and get you a little excited about it and so forth. So that's the end of my presentation. Sorry, I'm just a minute over, but I want to see if I can just go through some of these questions real quick that we can hammer out real quick. So, okay, DigitalinxIP supports any resolution. Depends on the series, right? So if it's a 2100 series, it's up to 1080p. It's any resolution up to 1080p. So you got 576p, 480p, whatever that is, you can go up to 1080p, right? With the 5000 series, you can go up to 4K. Now that's 4K 420 at 60 hertz at 8-bit color, or it's 4K at 24 hertz and 422 at 10-bit color for HDR, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of different formats for 4K. So it goes up to that 10 gigabit per second HDMI data rate, which you'll see about, you'll see many different types of resolutions there. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so which product would you range for interactive teaching? Well, I would probably suggest either the 5000 or the new upcoming 6000 series, depending on if the latency really bothers you. Go with 6000 because that'll be zero latency. The 5000 is just a little bit of latency that might bother some, but it really doesn't bother a whole lot of people, especially if you're, if it's interactive and you have an interactive whiteboard and so forth. You'll need USB to do that. So that's what I would suggest. What's the PoE switch recommended 24 port? Okay, if you go to our website and go to any of these products, and you go to the document section of that product, there's a switch and configuration guide. In that guide tells you all of the approved switches, approved. And when I say approved, it means we have those switches, we vetted those switches with our devices, we support those switches, and we can guarantee that they'll work, right? When you don't use a switch on that system, we're gonna help you. We're gonna show you the system settings that you need on that startup config and running config file for your switch. But if you spec something that's in our switch guide, you know it works. So that's usually the safe thing to do. So go hop online and go check out that. The software controls the old models too, was a question. And yes, it does. It'll control the older models as well that you have. So you want to go back and configure them with our new software with new features? Absolutely. Great question. Okay. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Something that says, will it fit into the same rack as the 2000 series? You might be talking about 5000 series or 6000 series. Yes, we have multiple rack mount options now. We have a single rack mount. We have a 6 RU that holds 6, I believe. We have an 8 RU that holds 12. So those options are also online. You go to any of our products online and you scroll down to see the recommended products. You're going to see a bunch of rack mount devices there as well. Okay. Oh, here's a big question that I really can't answer in one big felt swoop, but it's a good question. Which issue is more important, information security or decreasing latency, right? I would certainly think that security is probably the most important to some, but it just depends on the application. Look, if you need, if it's okay to have latency on a a device that or on a system for, let's say, sports bar, and it's on its own dedicated switch, and it's not on the internet, and it's not converged right into their local area network where their computers and printers are. Security is probably not that big of a deal. It's probably not something that's discussed. So it just depends on the application at the end of the day, but that's definitely a big question. I wouldn't say it's one or the other. We need better security with better latency at the end of the day, right? So, better security doesn't necessarily decrease latency, so don't tie those two together per se. Let's see, can a Ranger be used on an iPad, or is this PC only application? Yes, it's a PC only application. It's a very friendly application that anybody can use. End users can use them, can use this application to do whatever they want with the system. So it's something your customer can use. It's not just an integrator thing, right? But it's only PC. Now, if you wanted to control your system with a nice looking GUI, you could use a Ranger to build that custom UI with for the mobile devices. So you could do that in a Ranger, but you'd use your iPad or the mobile device that you created it for to actually control with the control UI. Okay. Someone said Apple compatible only, or does this work on Android tablet? So now the iOS app that's free that you can download right now, that's Apple only. There's no Android on that. However, when a Ranger comes out, it doesn't matter if it's Android. It doesn't matter if it's iOS. You can actually build the custom UI according to what device you will think they will use most often. If you think everybody's going to use an iPhone, you can build an iPhone 6 template and put all the control options on there, right? But you can use anything with to access the control UI, because really you're just accessing a location on the LAN, like with an IP address, right? So that's all that is. Are you going to share this webinar? Sure thing. I'll share this webinar for everyone. Everybody's asking for that, so I will certainly do that. Approximately latency for each series. Okay, good question. 0 latency for SDVOE 6000, so that's a plus. 15 to 25 milliseconds for the 5000 series, and somewhere around 250 milliseconds for the 2100 series. Once again, it's all about the application. Can the application allow latency for any reason, right? And is the quality good enough at the end of the day? If it's a critical situation where every millisecond counts, then 6000 series all the way, right? Okay. Will 2000 and 2001 fit in the same rack mount? Okay, that's a good question. So we have a little for the new 2100 series, we have rack modules for those that fits into all the existing 1 space, 6 space, 8 space units. So yes, you'll be able to fit 2000, 2001 all in the same rack system. Okay, here's a question about 5001D. This is the Dante encoder. Would you be able to ingest audio from the network and send it out to the audio or HDMI output of the 5001D? That would be very nice, but no, unfortunately, you cannot do that. Our device, our 5001D, is just to on-ramp audio on the HDMI embedded stream or ingest it into that analog input. That way it just gets onto the Dante network and you're not routing it back through our system. That's the whole point of the system there. 6000 is TAA certified. Nope, it is not. Does the software have the ability to ID the hardware decoders and encoders? Yes, it does. You can actually pop that up on the screen so you can see what you're looking at, right? Which decoder is it? Because that's a big thing. You've got 60 displays, 60 decoders behind all those displays. Which one is it? You can actually do that with the software. So it shows you what is the alias, what's the host name of that device, so you know exactly what that device is, right? Okay, and there we go. Answers all done. Great. Thank you. I really appreciate everyone that stuck around. I know we went over a little bit, but we had quite a few people still left over, and I was able to get through all the questions, so that's a bonus. We really appreciate your time. If there's anything I can do to help you, my name's Dory Hornsby. It's dhornsby@libav.com. Let me know how I can help you. Contact your sales rep about all these products and services that we have. We're really positioned here to help you with your IP distribution needs. Thank you once again, and take care.